The Joint Force does not do BDA. By design, we don't grade our own homework. The intelligence community does. But here's what we know following the attacks and the strikes on Fordo. First, that the weapons were built, tested, and loaded properly. Two, the weapons were released on speed and on parameters. Three, the weapons all guided to their intended targets and to their intended aim points. Four, the weapons functioned as designed, meaning they exploded. And we know this through other means, intelligence means that we have that were visibly, we were visibly able to see them. And we know that the trailing jets saw the first weapons function, and the pilots stated, quote, "This was the brightest explosion that I've ever seen. It literally looked like daylight."
New details emerging this morning from the Pentagon on the U.S. military strikes on Iran's key nuclear facilities. The Defense Secretary, Pete Hegseth, is calling the attack historically successful. And the chairman of the U.S. Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Dan Kane, is also revealing new details about the operation at the Fordo nuclear site, explaining just how the mission used vents inside the facility to deliver 6 bunker buster bombs. CNN correspondent Natasha Bertrand is joining us right now. Natasha, what more did we learn from today's Pentagon briefing?
Yeah, well, as you said, Wolf, Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Dan Kane, he did reveal a lot of new information about this massive ordnance penetrator bomb that the U.S. used on Fordo nuclear facility inside Iran, and all of the planning that has gone into a strike like this over the last 15 plus years, including the engineers who are responsible for coming up with the kind of operation that would actually penetrate Fordo nuclear facility and, if necessary, other nuclear facilities inside Iran. But it's worth noting that this briefing, particularly the details that we got from General Dan Kane, really focused on that one nuclear facility at Fordo, which is one of the most heavily fortified that Iran has inside the country. It is buried deep, deep underground. And so there were always questions about whether this massive ordnance penetrator bomb would actually destroy what's underground. Now, General Kane, he did speak to that a bit. He said, look, everything that the operation was supposed to hit was hit. Everything that was supposed to be targeted, we believe, was in fact targeted. He said the operation essentially was carried out in a flawless manner. But still, between General Kane and between Secretary Hegseth, there was no use of the term that President Trump has been saying repeatedly over recent days, which was obliterated. The idea that Iran's nuclear program itself was obliterated, that is not an assessment that General Kane or Secretary Hegseth would go as far as to say. And that is because, according to General Kane, something that he reiterated from the weekend is that it's just too early. And he said also that the battle damage assessment is not done by the Joint Staff, not done by his shop. It's done by the intelligence community. But here's a little bit of the back and forth he had with a reporter earlier today.
What has changed? Would you use the term obliterated as well?
Sure, like I said, we don't do BDA. I'll refer that to the intelligence community. And
you're talking with them. I mean, what changed in the past 3 days that make you so, you know?
Sir, I think I said.
I mean, I think I explained what changed. There was a great deal of irresponsible reporting based on leaks, preliminary information in low confidence.
So as you could see there, Secretary Hegseth, he would often jump in at times to provide a more political read on the situation, whereas Dan Kane was more focused on the specifics of the military operation. But one thing that did jump out at me as well is that Secretary Hegseth kept saying that the DIA assessment that CNN and others reported on was low confidence, that it was too early to come to any conclusions. But of course, at the same time, they are saying that the public needs to be confident in the fact that the military completed its objectives here. And so in some ways, they're trying to have it both ways, Wolf.
Yeah, and it's interesting that Defense Secretary Hegseth himself acknowledged that General Kane, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, is not political, is not going to issue political statements, but he said he is more political. He himself said he was more political, and he would be issuing some political statements, which, of course, he did. Natasha Bertrand, thanks very much for that update. I want to play something that the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, Dan Kane, said today during the briefing, and then we'll discuss. Listen to this.
In the days preceding the attack against Fordo, the Iranians attempted to cover the shafts with concrete to try to prevent an attack. The cap was forcibly removed by the first weapon, and the main shaft was uncovered. Weapons 2, 3, 4, 5 were tasked to enter the main shaft, move down into the complex at greater than 1,000 feet per second, and explode in the mission space.
And they showed video, by the way, of that attack with the bunker-busting bombs going down. We're going to play that video for our viewers momentarily. But if the Iranians had time to prepare, and presumably they were anticipating perhaps that the U.S. would do this, could they have moved enriched uranium and other key parts of a nuclear bomb out of that area?
Absolutely, and we've seen in Isfahan that there was perhaps a dozen trucks that left that facility on Wednesday, a couple of days before the attack. So, look, Wolf, I've been in bunkers in Korea and in Cheyenne Mountain and in Raven Rock. You know, they are meant to withstand nuclear attacks. I mean, no one's denying that the targets were hit. However, the impact we still don't know, and we won't know until we actually get boots on the ground to go inside there and see what really happened.
Well, let me ask you about this so-called test video that they showed during the course of this morning's press briefing at the Pentagon. Watch this. You see what's... Now walk us through, you see that initial explosion, and then you see this video from what they say was underground. Look at this, watch. Totally devastated. That's very impressive, that video, isn't it?
It is impressive, but this was a test. We don't know the operational impact of the actual execution of this mission. It looks really impressive on video, but I can tell you that 300 feet is a long way. That's higher than the Statue of Liberty. And, you know, we built facilities 60 years ago in Cheyenne Mountain and Raven Rock that were made to essentially withstand nuclear attacks. They put everything on big springs down there. They have all kinds of secure devices down there and vaults that can secure the area down there. Are the centrifuges still active? Probably not, but how much was actually decimated, we don't know, and we need to find out.
As you know, the early, and I want to stress the word early, Defense Intelligence Agency, DIA, assessment was based on what they call a Phase 3 analysis of battle damage. How valuable are these reports in the days immediately following attacks like the one that the U.S. carried out over the past few days? Well,
as a veteran of 4 tours in the Pentagon, I can tell you that the quicker we can get information out to leadership, the better. And so what they try to do is they try to make an initial analysis. They rated it as low confidence. They knew that they'd get more information to build on this. But what's really sad is that, you know, perhaps the only thing that truly has been obliterated is the morale of the intel analysts that put that report together. There are hundreds of people. I mean, General Kane talked a lot about the DITRA gentlemen, two folks that worked on this facility, started in the Obama administration, by the way, back in 2009. But what about all those analysts that are working round the clock to give our nation's leaders the best possible information they can? We threw those people under the bus, and it's really sad.
The initial assessment
absolutely.
Potentially could change. Retired General Steve Anderson, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, Wolf.
Appreciate it very, very much.